Africa is the world's second largest continent by both size and number after Asia. Its landmass holds 54 countries and 9 territories. Over 1.1 billion people call Africa home and call themselves Africa. Africa and being African has become a core part of the identity of millions of the continent's inhabitants. But where does this word, to which so many have an emotional connection, come from? The exact origins of the word Africa is debatable, but there is little history known. We know that the word Africa was first used by the Romans to describe that part of the Carthaginian Empire which lies in present-day Tunisia. There is, however, no consensus among scholars as to why Romans decided to call these provinces Africa. Over the years, a small number of theories have gained traction. In the early 16th century, the famous medieval traveler and scholar Leo Africanus al-Hassan Muhammad al-Wazan, who had traveled across most of North Africa, giving detailed accounts of all that he saw there, suggested the name Africa was derived from the Greek word Afrik, meaning without cold, or without horror. In a similar line of thought, other historians have suggested that the Romans may have derived the name from the Latin word for sunny or hot, namely aprica. Where exactly the Romans got the name Africa from is, however, still in dispute. Africa contains an enormous wealth of mineral resources, including some of the world's largest reserves of fossil fuels, metallic ores, and gems and precious metals. The richness is matched by a great diversity of biological resources that includes the intensely lush equatorial rainforests of Central Africa and the world-famous populations of wildlife of the eastern and southern portions of the continent. Although agriculture, primarily subsistence, still dominates the economies of many African countries, the exploitation of these resources became the most significant economic activity in Africa in the 20th century.
Africa is rich and not poor. As the great wealth that has been taken out of our continent over 5 centuries of spoliation and extortion very well proved. Africa has immense actual and potential wealth: gold, diamond, copper, manganese, bauxite, iron ore, uranium, asbestos, chrome, cobalt, a host of other minerals. Our essential agricultural produce have all been drained away by colonialist imperialism. Africa is far from being poor. It is Africans who are poor, not Africa. And they are poor because of the uncounted profit that has been made out of the exploitation of their labor and their lands.
On May the 25th, 1963, the leaders from 30 of the then 32 independent African states signed a founding charter in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The OAU was created to help bring about change, freedom, independence to many African countries. In 1991, the OAU established the African Economic Community, and in 2002, the OAU established its own successor, the African Union. Since the establishment of the OAU, a further 21 states have joined. South Africa became the latest and 53rd member on May 23, 1994. This year's theme of the Africa Unity Day is strengthening resilience in nutrition and food security on the African continent, strengthening agro-food systems, health and social protection systems for the acceleration of human, social and economic capital development. Let's take a closer look at why this year we're focusing on nutrition and food security on the African continent. Africa was estimated to have a population of 1.25 billion in 2018 and is the fastest urbanizing continent. With a growth rate of more than 2.6%, the large youth population presents a potential demographic dividend that, if adequately leveraged with the right investments, could contribute to accelerating sustainable and equitable development. Over the years, the under 5 mortality has reduced by more than 50% between 1994 to 2019. Fertility rates have declined from 6 to 4 children per woman. However, compared to the rest of the world, the malnutrition remains high in the continent, and undernutrition is particularly an underlying cause of almost half of child deaths. The global health crisis of COVID-19 has greatly exposed the economic vulnerability of African countries as well as the weaknesses of the health and food systems. With COVID-19 pandemic, much of human capital gains in many economies over the past decade is at risk of being eroded. The price to pay for keeping the virus at bay has been in many African countries at the expense of the gains made in reducing malnutrition. Especially, the prevalence of wasting will also increase due to higher risks of acute food insecurity. Concerted efforts to reshape Africa's food system to be more resilient, productive, and inclusive is vital to withstand food security threats and achieve SDG and Agenda 2063 commitments. The African Union now has a clear set of goals to be achieved by 2063. Collaborating with the United Nations and synchronized with its Sustainable Development Goals, Agenda 63 sets measurable targets that will be monitored regularly. What are some of our aspirations for the Africa we want? Number 1, a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. Number 2, an integrated continent politically united and based on the ideals of Pan-Africanism and the vision of Africa's Renaissance. Number 3, an Africa of good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, justice, and the rule of law. Number 4, a peaceful and secure Africa. Number 5, an Africa with a strong cultural identity, common heritage, values, and ethics. Number 6, an Africa where development is people-driven, unleashing the potential of its women and youth. Number 7, Africa as a strong, united, and influential global player and partner.
I am an African. I owe my being to the hills and the valleys, the mountains and the glades, the rivers, the deserts, the trees, the flowers, the seas, and the ever-changing seasons that define the face of our native land. My body has frozen in our frosts and in our latter-day snows. It has thawed in the warmth of our sunshine and melted in the heat of the midday sun. The crack and the rumble of the summer thunders, lashed by startling lightning, have been a cause both of trembling and of hope. The fragrances of nature have been as pleasant to us as the sight of the wild blooms of the citizens of the veldt, the dramatic shapes of the dragon's back, the soil-colored waters of the Likwa, Iqeli, Notugela.
In the words of Patrice L.O. Lumumba, third world is a state of mind, and until we change our attitude as Africans, if there's a fourth, fifth, or even sixth world, we will be in it if we do not change our mindset and how we come together as Africans. Happy Africa Unity Day.